President, I just signed up for AWC. So maybe I'll see it at the hotel, or maybe I'll see it at one of the social events where we're just rubbing elbows.
You're going to attend?
Here and there, yes. I mean, I want to check the menu and see where I can see what I can attend. I want to do as much as I can.
Yeah, you guys got really good sessions and stuff. Lots of good information.
Have you decided that there are a couple of favorites that you want to see?
Yes, let's see. The one with DiGiulio, he's always interesting. He's a previous city attorney. He actually has his part of a law firm. Yeah. Advancing racial equity is another one. And AWC advocacy, at least those.
Good. I assume that Julio is on one of the earlier sessions.
So he is Wednesday at 12:30. Let me tell you what the title is. Let me go find it real quick.
Somebody taking a shower? Tell Mayhew to mute his mic.
Councilor James, I think it's called like, it's about mayors and council and their different responsibilities.
Good, thanks.
Okay, folks, so it's 6 o'clock, so I'll go ahead and call the Snoqualmie City Roundtable to order. And as folks recall, we've been kind of going through the council plan and looking at projected revenues and all the assumptions, all the expenses and revenue assumptions. And then you're looking at some of the challenges facing us, some financial gaps that we saw opening up after the fourth quarter of 2019. And then of course that was aggravated by 2020. So tonight we're finally to a point where the council can start engaging in some discussion regarding some strategies and how to move forward and to meet those challenges. So with that, I'll turn it over to Robert to just queue up a couple slides and then we'll open it for some conversation. Robert, are you ready?
Hey, Mayor, this is Rick.
Yeah, go ahead, Rick.
Some of you, I sent a link out, a reminder link. So some of you are showing up as me. The idea wasn't to send you my personal link. It was to remind you of the links that are going to be for tonight. We are to have two links, one for this meeting and one for the executive session. So if you can go back and if you're me, get out of Zoom, go back to the original reminder that Kevin put out and come back in as yourself. I do apologize for this snafu. Just trying to be helpful on reminding you of the meetings. But I talked with Kevin. Kevin slapped me behind the head for a good reason, saying that you guys have your own personal reminders for this meeting. So I do apologize if you come up as me. It's kind of fun to see my name 5 times, but you might want to go back and just look real quick and go back and hit your specific individual link that was sent to you. So sorry for the snafu. I do apologize. And I apologize to Kevin profusely. So thank you, Mayor, for that.
All right, thank you, Rick.
We've corrected the ones who came in so far.
Okay, thank you, Kevin.
You bet.
Sorry about that, brother.
All right.
And Kevin, I sent you the slide deck. If you could put that up. I apologize to everybody. I'm having some computer difficulties today.
Stand by.
Did we get something by email for today's meeting?
This is going to be a discussion, so this is not a presentation per se tonight. I can definitely, after the meeting, I can email out the slides, but there's just a few, and some of them are slides we already have shown. Hey, Kevin, you're going to share your screen?
I believe he is.
Robert, perhaps you could start with slide 2 and 3 and then end with this one as we discussed.
Sure. Hold on just a moment.
Slide 2, Jimmy.
Hold on. Okay. Yeah, so again, change on slide 2. This is the COVID recovery, again, what we're expecting, but we want to focus on the gap. So what we're trying to focus on is the out years, and that's where we're trying to prompt the discussion. Again, we've discussed different solutions on the COVID recovery, but we're trying to look at the out years. So regardless of COVID, again, this slide, for example, assumes a recovery into the next biennium that we're preparing the budget for in COVID. What we're trying to do is we're trying to close the gap and talk about what we initiated the discussion at the retreat back in February on, which is how to close the difference between revenues and expenditures in the out years that's forecasted right now. And again, this is the forecast that's trying to maintain service levels as is, factoring in inflation for personal services, benefits and services and supplies. And same thing with revenues. There's no new revenue enhancements. There's no 1%. This is just flat inflationary growth on the revenue side. So that's what we're looking at, plus growth in utility tax revenues based on utility fees. So that's all you're seeing here on this chart. So again, this is our flat bare bones forecast here. And Mayor, did you want to add anything?
Just real quick. I mean, the purpose of showing you this slide and the next slide is just there's kind of two challenges immediately facing us. One is what to do with this remaining 6 months of 2020 and a budget that was already approved. We obviously have to make some immediate adjustments given that a gap of several $100,000 has opened up in our, in other words, we're projected to come short of the revenue needed to meet our 2020 budget. So this slide is showing a scenario where we anticipate a rather quick recovery from COVID, where the economy gets underway again, and by 2022 we're seeing those revenues coming back up. The next slide is one that's projecting a longer term recovery. This one here, where it similar to the 2008 Great Recession, it was just a very slow, steady recovery over several years. If this scenario were to be true, it would suggest that you would not dip into any reserves to solve the problem, because you couldn't find enough reserves over several years to meet the problem. So you might as well rip off the Band-Aid and address it now, and start making some serious service levels cuts. On the prior slide, with a fairly quick recovery, it would suggest, no, don't sacrifice your service levels. We have ample reserves to address the immediate problem. And, so that would be the best way to address it. We are recommending on that short term for the remaining 6 months to take a more, because of the high unpredictability of those numbers, particularly on the revenue side, of taking more of a hybrid approach, which means, as we said before, we would be looking for about approximately $500,000 in cost reductions out of the city budget. And then the remaining dollars up, you know, of a few hundred to, you know, another $500,000 or so would come from some of the rainy day fund or reserves that would cover that. And then we continue to reassess that as we go toward the end of the year, go into our approving the biennium budget to see if we need to address that strategy, either a further reliance on reserves going into next year, or if this scenario proves to be more true, the one with a slow recovery, then maybe we have to look at further cuts or other revenue sources. So prior to doing that. So that's all we wanted to kind of queue up. And then if you could go back to that first slide then with the Venn menu, we're going to call it. Keep going back one more slide. Yeah, this would be the Venn menu or the council toolboxes. So we want to queue up the conversation tonight is just, of course, you only have limited tools in order to address that fiscal challenge or fiscal cliff. So the question would be, what kind of tools does the council have an appetite for committing to, or what sort of strategies or combination of strategies? And that's where we wanted to open it for conversation tonight. Robert, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, and just a side note, so these are the options that we've already discussed and presented in the slide decks before, and we're just hoping to have dialogue and conversation on them. So again, these, and you know, we can elaborate on anything that needs clarification by council.
And just to reiterate what Robert was saying, you know, once we've sort of addressed that short-term decision on that hybrid one, we're recommending if that's acceptable to the council, then we really need to look at whatever strategies are not addressing just next year, the next several months or 2 years. It's really about addressing the next 6 years or 7 or 10 years to know it's got to be a sustainable strategy that rectifies that. Councilor Sunwell.
Yeah, do we have any data from Q1 on sales tax, and when would we have Q2s?
Okay, so I received the sales tax numbers for March. Our sales tax data from the state, it lags 2 months. So I just received the March data about a week and a half ago. The March data reflect a 25% drop in sales tax, which is along the lines of what we had forecasted and put in the budget. So, and that was a partial shutdown month. That wasn't a full shutdown month. So we saw a 25% drop. The next update I'll get for April will be approximately 3 weeks or so from now. So about the second week of July, end of second week of July.
So 25% drop is how many dollars?
25% drop. It was just for 1 month. So that was, and that was off the estimate. So that was about, let's see, 1.2. Hold on a minute, I can do the quick math.
Councilor Ross and Councilor Sheppard.
Besides the sales tax, do we know what in Snoqualmie our unemployment rate is? And also how many customers have asked to delay their utility bills and businesses or B&O tax?
Yeah, unemployment rates, the rates you see on TV or the rates you see from the state, they're done at the county level and not the city level. We get an annual non-seasonally adjusted number at the end of the year. Unfortunately, that doesn't help us for what we're looking at right now. So unfortunately, we don't have it by city. And I think I can take a look, Councilmember Ross, to your point, to see if there's any data and statistics that the Department of Labor has. I think they compile it by office. I can see if there's any way we can look at claims by zip code. One thing that's going to make it very difficult right now is the fact that the state had the data breach for unemployment compensation. We actually had employees here at the city that were in fact impacted by it. And because of that, they've actually freezed some of the claims and reversed some of the claims. And so the data might take a month to really sort out at the state level, unfortunately. So, but once it is, we'll try to get you the best information we can. We'll take a look.
But then what about any of the utility, what percentage or amount of residents have pushed out their utility bills? That might be an indicator as well.
I could get back to you on that one. We've had a lot of inquiries. Not everybody has done it so far, but we've had inquiries. But let me get back to you on that. I can, let me see what we can pull for that as far as data.
I think the more impactful one that we're trying to assess is not so much those that have deferred a payment that will eventually receive, but those who due to unemployment have requested, have qualified for the low income rate, and therefore the rate's dropping, which would be a result in a permanent loss of revenue for the city. Yeah, Robert, if you get that sales tax number that Councilmember Snowball requested too, that'd be good. Do you want me to hold off on further questions until you?
Hold on just a moment. Just got that. Yeah, it was just under a $50,000 decrease, but that was just 1 month worth of sales tax.
I think it's important to note that that's not indicative of the suffering that's happening with the small business community. We're anticipated upwards of a 75% drop from many of the small businesses. We're not seeing that ourselves because businesses like Safeway have actually probably been doing better business than normal. We're also seeing a shift to online sales where we're receiving additional sales tax from online purchases as well. So it's been mitigated. The impact to us has been mitigated by that. Councilmember Sheppard.
Is it possible, sorry, is it possible for us to get a year over year for property tax and sales tax as far as what the difference is?
Well, the property tax is still tracking within normal realms. Again, we're not expecting property tax to drop. There's always, some uncollected at the end of the year. We factor that into our budget. Some cities don't. It's property tax is not, but I can do, and property tax, the last payment, I believe not all of it is posted yet. So I can get back to you probably beginning of July with a more accurate number on property tax. And for sales tax, I can get you a year over year for March if you'd like.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Councilmember Holloway. Councilmember Holloway, you'll need to unmute.
Yeah, as soon as I find that little button. Okay, so the administration have any issue with hiring freezes at this stage now that Rick's on board?
I'll ask Rick to respond to that.
Rick has no problem with it now.
Thank you, Councilmember Holloway. If you can define your question, if I don't have a problem with that, define your question a little bit more for me.
So my question is, I view this chart as giving me a menu of things I can select or knobs I can twist. And one of those says hiring freeze.
Okay.
So
Yeah,
what's the potential offset there? Are there issues with that? Can we do it?
Maybe you could start with just specifically speaking to where do you see us saving $500,000 between now and the end of the year?
I see it in a lot of different places. I see it in salary savings. I see it in budgets not spent because of maybe the COVID didn't allow us to do certain things. So we might leave some of the budget that was allocated for 2020 on the table. In other words, by the end of the year, if your budget is 92% spent, when you should be 100% spent, there's 8% left over, that type of thing. This box actually should say reductions as a broad statement. When we're looking at these different things, there's probably another 5 or 10 items we could put in this box. These were just examples. However, we are prepared to put a hiring freeze in. We are prepared to look at freezing the COLA. We are prepared to freezing raises. But if you think about it, that is just very temporal for us right now. And we're having to fill over 6 years a huge gap. So I don't know that we need to talk about the basic stuff. We can find $500,000 by doing some of these things. But our real quest, I think, here moving forward is how we're going to fill the space where you see that graph going all the way out to 2026. We don't think we're going to have a problem short term, but it's the long term that we're really looking at trying to fill. I think the mayor and mayor pro tem can maybe add to that, but we can do these little things for us temporary. No problem. I mean, we have to, right? So we were looking at $500,000. And then at the last meeting, we were looking at $500,000 from staff and then maybe the council putting some money in. And what that means is council has allowed monies to be procured or encumbered for certain projects or studies or whatever, as Mayor Pro Tem very kindly brought up in the last meeting, that maybe council can do something as well so we can increase that short-term look. But if you're looking at short-term, then we're missing the big picture of the long-term, which is way more important because we can do the short-term stuff.
So,
And that's why we're kind of talking about here, we're looking at economic development, vitality, taxes and fees, and then levels of service in for another 5 to 6 years. That's what we really have to look at, what we're going to look at from 5 years to 10 years. So to go back to answer your question, no, I don't think any of us have a problem with any of these things in the box doing that, as far as even adding 5 or 10 or 12 more things that we're looking at to make sure we can do the short-term stuff right now.
okay, so, but hang on. As you said, I've got 2 targets. I got a near-term $1 million target. Okay, so I guess at some stage, I hear you saying administration has a way of doing the $500,000. Love to hear what that is and love to hear dollar figures against the actions you're taking so that we can track to the $500,000 there.
Yes.
Okay. For the $500,000 that you're looking for council, what are the options to do that near term? And then also, I agree, let's talk the long term and the planning assumptions moving forward and go from there.
Yeah. Yes, I agree, but the council doesn't have to come up with a full $500,000. The idea for the rest of 2020 was $500,000, right? It's half a year. So we're looking at that. We're also looking at partial reserve and maybe partial kind of a hybrid. So we pull from different buckets to meet the 2020. 2020 is not the issue. The immediate issue, in my opinion, is 21, 22. And that's where we came up with the $500,000 from staff, let's say, if you will. Then a couple of $100,000 maybe from the council, if you will. And then maybe balancing that out with some buckets of money that we can go ahead and get through the biennial budget. I don't think we'll have too much problem doing that. And right now, Robert and staff is working on all these different things. See, if you see the new slide, it says reductions in levels of service provided, which is that's the way it should state, because there's so many things we can look at. And what we're planning on bringing to the council for the short term is hiring freeze, 50,000, freezing COLA, 25,000, taking this service to this level, savings of 30,000. Those are the kind of things we'll bring, but that's for later on in the budget when we're looking at crunching numbers to balance the budget for the end of the year. This particular budget workshop that we're doing now is looking at that big picture 5 to 10 years out. So I hope I'm answering your question, but I think we got the short term, at least for this year and for the biennial, handled, and we're going to bring you those lists and the numbers that go along with it. And then we'll have the second quarter numbers to see where we are sales tax wise. And that's when we're going to crunch the numbers. We know we have to do that, right? That's kind of what we're working on as operations right now. But this type of look is to look at the bigger picture going out. So I hope I answered your question.
Well, partially. You're telling me you can't answer the question until next time. I'm looking for the bulleted list and dollar figures associated to close the $1 million gap.
Yes.
Let's talk that next meeting.
Okay.
Fine. Let's talk target 2. I got a long-term gap. Same thing. Need to develop a bullet list of these will be things that the gap is assumed to be X amount of dollars in 5 years. What are the things we're going to do to close that gap? And what are the dollar figures associated to that over the 5-year term period? So mill site, S21, business park expansion. What are we expecting? What are the dollar figures we're expecting for those in the budget 5 years from now? And to what extent do they close that gap? Then let's just put back in the assumption of 1% annual increase in property tax. How does that close the gap in 5 years? So I'm just looking for that bulleted list and dollar figures to go with that I can start ticking down Did we hit the target and have we closed?
And we did show you some of those scenarios in the last roundtable meeting, as you might recall. In other words, different combinations using some of these tools in the toolbox to say, well, if we put, you know, a levied lid lift, the mill site, and some service reductions, what that would look like, and you know, and that whatever mix you did that impacts that. So Robert is prepared to, if a council member says, well, I've looked at that and I think here's my solution, I want to do X, Y, and Z and A, we can throw that up there and you can take a look at how that looks, how it's closing that gap is if it looks sustainable. Councilman Lasay.
Yeah, I'd put my hand down because Brian was headed down the path I was headed down, but then I think we deviated again because the challenge is for us is if we say, okay, we'll have a we're going to have a bulleted item list to look at, and then we're going to have one for the next meeting, then maybe we'll have one for the next meeting. At some point, it's the council's responsibility to go through that list and give you scenarios to map out. And I appreciate that the staff has gone through and said, okay, if we have the mill site, we do a business park, if we do those to have the revenue increases, if we take some things out, I like the way to see those examples, but I was under the impression that we're now going to start picking those items. So getting that bullet list and understanding what is in our menu that staff thinks will have significant impact, we can start, you know, plugging that into the formula and seeing what comes out the other side in terms of those graphs, so we know where we're at. But I guess I'm just reiterating what Brian was saying, is that it's time. We need to start looking at these things.
Yeah, I appreciate what you're saying, Councilman. I think the challenge for us is if I pull an item up there, for example, mill site, and you say, well, what's the number attached to that? I'm gonna have to give you 6 different numbers for 6 different years. So that's why it's sort of easier to say to Robert, well, what's the mill site impact look like against that 6-year projection? Because then you can just look at a graphical graph that shows how much that line moves versus trying to digest 6 numbers against another dozen numbers.
Mayor, I respect that, but the mill site may not be one of the things that this council chooses to include. But until the council has that chance to go through that, we don't know which ones will be the ones that include.
I understand. I guess I'm trying to clarify what exactly is the council looking for. Do you literally want? I mean, like in my State of the City address, I did show a graphic of the mill site plan with a box showing projected revenues for every year, growing from about $500,000 to nearly $1 million over 5 or 6 years. We could certainly give you information like that and again, these are not exact numbers. They're just, you know, projections and guesses in many cases. I mean, they're more speculative on like S21 or business park expansion, highly speculative, but we can certainly give you some rough, you know, estimates of what that is yearly, what that means. Is that what you're looking for?
Yeah, I think if I can finish, I mean, we have two targets to hit. One is the remainder of the 2019-2020 biennium, and one is the 21-22 biennium. So as we've talked about, I believe we want to see what it might be out 5 years, 6 years, because a long-term projection is going to help us, but we understand those numbers may not be solid. We may, you know, if we were looking at this, if I remember, we were looking at this 2 years ago, and Snoqualmie, the expansion of the Salish was a part of the forecast. We now know that's not part of the forecast anymore. In 2 years from now, we'll have another item that may fall off. And so understand that those will be preliminary, and they may, in 2 months, they might not be valid anymore either. But we got to start from somewhere. And I think that's what I'd like to do, is start from somewhere.
Councillor Sheppard and Councillor Holloway.
So to add to what Matt Lasay said, is that we don't have control over the mill site at this point, but we do have control over reductions in levels of service. So I would vote for us to work on the things that we have control over, and, you know, work through the process that we would normally work through for things like the mill site.
Councillor Holloway, you do round robin. I noticed Councillor Mayhew's hand is going up. Do you want to let him go before you, or?
I yield to Pro Tem.
All right. Councillor Mayhew, and then I'll come back to Councillor Holloway.
Okay, I was raising my hand the wrong way and I finally figured it out. This doesn't work. The little blue thing works. Okay.
Yeah, no, the problem is, Jim, just to clarify, and I should have clarified again. When a presentation is up, I can only see about 6 videos. So if you end up shifting on to the next page and I'm not toggling back and forth, I'll never see you. So you have to use the virtual hand.
Yes, no, I wasn't criticizing. I agree.
Oh, all right, thank you.
I was mocking myself. Yeah. So you have to understand how my house is. It's a race to mock yourself before someone else mocks you unfriendly. Okay, so I think we've sort of, I agree with most of what we got to that has just been said. I think those things that are on the screen right now, those are things they've showed us. And they have those slides. And I think our request to them was, okay, enough with the slides. We've seen them. So they've got them. If we say, show me the slide that puts S21 on there, they've got that slide. They'll just put it up for us. So they're ready to do that. All of these options that we're looking at right now have been shown to us. And then they even put some together. Well, what if you did these 3 or those 2? So at this point, what they're saying to us is, okay, we think we've shown you everything. Which of these are you interested in? What is it that you want to move forward? And it's not so much that they're giving us something, it's for us to decide together. So I'll just start. I'll tell you, and by the way, I think Councilor Maurice said it perfectly a minute ago, in my view, which is we have 2 problems. I think Councilor Holloway said the same thing. We have 2 problems. We have a short-term problem, which is the next 6 months. And then we've got a longer-term problem, which is 21 onwards. And let's look at it for the next 6 years. Let's not worry about tonight, the next 6 months. So let's just take that off the table for a minute. So what we're left with is here. So I mean, we can do things for a short term. You can do a cost of living freezes. You can do hiring freezes. Those only last for a while before you have to actually make something long-term and permanent. So let's just set those aside. We'll come back to those. But if we look out 6 years, so I'll go first and I'll say, I do not believe there is any level of service that we have that we can meaningfully cut now over the next 6 years. I don't think we're willing to, for example, on police, I don't think we're willing to go down to 1 police officer on duty at night with no backup. I don't think we're willing to do that. I don't think we're willing to undo what the voters just did 2 years ago on fire, where we made sure that we can have our fire truck roll with 4 firemen so that they can attack a fire and save lives. I just had a fire, actually 2 fires at the same house in the last 2 years, just 3 houses down from mine. And in the first fire at that location, there were people inside that house when the fire department turned up. So I don't think that any of us have an idea that we want to cut the fire department, especially since the voters just voted to increase and fund that level just a couple years ago. So I'm not sure. I'm not aware of anywhere. Okay, maybe for the biennial budget, we can shave a little here or there, but in terms of overall levels of service, over that 6 years, we've got at least a $10 million problem in our operating budget. 10 million bucks, that would be massive cuts in levels of service, massive headcount cuts. I don't think any of us are interested in that. If we are, let's put that on the table. But if actually we all agree with that, let's take that off the table and let's move on to the other categories. So that's I'll throw that out first, as I would say, let's take, as far as meaningful, permanent change in expenses, let's just take reductions in levels of service off the plate. That's my view.
Councilor Holloway, and then Councilor, I'm sorry, yeah, and then Councilor Jeans. Go ahead, Councilor Holloway, and then Jeans.
So I guess I would like to see a scenario that has mill site, S21, the 1% property tax increase being put into effect, and then the 0.2% for transportation, and see where that gets us. I guess if I have to prioritize amongst these selections of which ones to hit off, so, I mean, if you're ready to show the slide, how much of the hole gets filled by the mill site, I'm ready to see it.
Okay, Councilor, I did want to point out it, because of the formatting where the lines are centered rather than to the left, levied lid lifts kind of gets lost there. It's a second item on that of the ones you just pointed, Councilor Holloway. Councilor Jeans and Councilor Sheppard.
Saw it.
So I'm wondering what, I'm looking at economic development, and I'm wondering whether we have philosophically not included potential expansion in our urban growth area, specifically West Hills, and whatever we call that geography that's across from S21, that's across from the hospital, that from time to time there have been some rather active plans to do things there. So I'm asking staff and the mayor why we don't have those on the as options.
So real quickly, Councilor Jeans, I'll say that on the West Snoqualmie Hills area, part of why we didn't put it in this equation is we didn't see anything practically speaking that would happen within a 6-year time horizon. So that would be a project that we could pursue, but it wouldn't likely be revenues that would be brought in anytime before 6 years. You know, even if we started today, it would probably take at least 6 years before any revenues would arrive. So it's outside of the window we're currently analyzing. On the leisure time resort property, that's just outside the UGA. As you recall, we made a couple runs in 2 4-year cycles with comp plan updates from the county. It's somewhat politically radioactive. We haven't brought it to your attention, but there's a former King County Council member, Julia Patterson, who's working with a development group that has some interest in that Griffith parcel by the hospital. We're not putting a lot of energy into it, but we're keeping an eye on their progress. They're working with county officials and others, given her prior influence and all her connections. It might be interesting to see if that gets any legs. So if that does get some traction where there would be some interest in maybe expanding the UG in that area, we will immediately bring that back to this conversation. But right now, we're only doing the things that either are in that 6-year horizon or have some real viability to happen.
So with respect to the items that you have enumerated, on S21, I wonder if there is any interest in building medical office buildings adjacent to the hospital or other things related to the medical community. And I'm wondering what the business park expansion is. Business park, I think, is pretty much built out, so you must be talking about adding geography and to the down the hill and beyond what is physically there now. Is that what you're talking about?
That is correct. Yeah. I mean, if you go back and look at my state of the city address, I showed that in a map too, and as well as I believe, well, maybe we didn't show a map on that, but yeah, it would be moving into that urban growth area immediately to the east of the business park, grabbing whether you want 30, 40, 50, 60 acres. There is strong interest from a few individuals in doing some development in that area.
I mean, that's sort of getting into the West Hills area, right?
Yes, it is. It would be a portion of that area.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilor Ross and Councilor Sheppard. And I'm sorry, Councilor Sheppard, I'm doing round robin. I haven't heard from Councilor Ross yet.
Okay, 2 things. One is, I was reading about National Association for Business Economics came out with information stating that we're in a deep recession right now, but we should start returning our personal consumption expenditures through the rest of this year and be to first quarter levels later next year. And so my proposal is to use the charts that show with COVID recovery to start with. And I agree with Councilor Mayhew that we should just take reducing levels of service off the table, because that's our residents love level of service that the city provides. And I think that should be reduced. Should be, not reduced. Take it off the table.
Thank you. Councilor Sheppard.
So I have a question about, I've already shared my preference as far as reductions in level of service. And so I don't want to take that off the table. But in addition to that, levy lid lifts requires a voter, a vote, right, of the residents?
That's correct. 50%, simple majority.
Okay, and what about the other two, the sales tax for transportation, does that require a vote?
Yes, it does.
Okay, and the sales tax for public safety, same thing?
Yes, it would, yes.
Okay, so the 1% is the one that we can do without going through a voter approval. Just
That's-
wanted to make sure I understood that.
That's correct.
Okay, thanks.
Councilmember Jeans, did you still have your hand up?
No, I'm going to take it down now. Sorry.
Councilmember Mayhew. And then Councilmember Sunwell.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, Councilmember Sheppard, I wasn't aware that you had some level of service decreases in mind. Is there anything that you want to share with us? I know I was pushing to just take that off the table, but if there's something specific and you had in mind, I'd love to hear it.
Do I need to be acknowledged?
Go ahead, Councilmember Sheppard.
Okay, so I've gone through a process in another city where they did have to lay off a lot of people, and it's difficult, but sometimes you have to do it if you know the finances are difficult, and we don't have any information to really speak to this specifically. I don't have enough information to speak to. You would want to know how long a person has been in a position, what the total staffing would be for, you know, what their responsibilities are, and you'd have to have a lot more information. But I think it would be sensible for us to not keep it in the mix.
Councilmember Sunwell.
So a couple things. One is a point of clarification for Councilmember Sheppard to confirm. What I sense is she's not talking about policemen and firemen, police persons and fire persons, that she's talking about city staff. That's my assumption based on what she just said. But my question was, and the intention of asking this question is I don't think we'd save $10 million if we cut 50% of both. So my question really is what do we save per firefighter, per policeman by cutting?
Did you want me to respond?
Yeah, and then maybe Rick can respond to the other.
So my thinking is that you need to go through every person that works for the city, look at how much it costs the city and what their level of, you know, when are they busy? And, you know, if it is related to certain types of activity that maybe the city is not as active in. I think that there's a lot that goes into it. And no, it's not just one department. It would be across all departments that I would like to see it. But I don't have anything that I can share with you specifically at this moment. And I don't know how significant or insignificant it might be. But I would like to not take it off the table. I'd like to have a better understanding of what our costs are as far as our personnel. And I know that that's one of the biggest costs for the city.
Councilmember Lasay.
Whoa, my other question didn't get answered.
Oh, yeah, thank you. Robert or Rick, if you wanted to address the other question, please.
Yeah, can we have the question repeated one more time?
Yeah, it's what, and just for the record,
Sure.
I won't support a single reduction in police and fire. Just saying that right now. If we want to talk about city staff, I'll entertain more information. But my question was, what would we save per fireman, per policeman by, you know, if we kill one, sorry, poor term. If we release one police officer, what do we save? If we release a fire person, what do we save?
Okay. I'll give a generality, and if Robert wants to be specific, I don't know that we have the exact number for a police officer or a fireman, because How many years have they been here? What's their merit? What's their merit rate? What are they getting paid? Based on what position they have? How does that factor into benefits? So what I will agree with, just for this particular question, is personnel is your highest cost. We have that number. Robert has that number in previous budgets, and it shows our personnel costs with salaries and benefits. Other cities are looking at layoffs and everything, okay? I don't necessarily agree with that we separate police and fire from other city staff. In other words, we don't lay off police and fire, but we can look at laying off staff. I don't agree with that at all. I think everybody should be treated equally. That's just my opinion, and I'm looking at it as from a budget perspective, okay? I really believe we are understaffed. Now, what we have done and what we are going to do is for the next 6 months, we are going to consolidate some positions within our city to save some of these personnel numbers, like Councilmember Sheppard is saying. We think we can save some salary and some benefits for this next 6 months by combining some positions. We have a couple in the works right now. With that being said, going into 21-22, when we look at all these different buckets and we look at this diagram to see what can we do and what's the best scenario for us, I really believe that we can get where we need to be without fleecing our staff. Staff is your number one asset for a community, for an agency to move forward. We're in a unique position because our revenue sources are not based on a lot of this highs and lows roller coaster revenue that we're seeing in other cities, where they have no choice but to cut their highest expense, which is personnel. I think not even a word. I think we will be okay going forward without cutting staff. I think we can find what we need to find. Obviously, if we were like some of the other places where our revenues are rocketing into the poorhouse, yes, we would have to look at those things, and the items that are of the highest cost is personnel, and we would have to look at that. I don't believe we have to go there and we can keep what we have. We are looking at hiring freezes, raise freezes, COLA freezes, whatever other freezes, compensation package freezes to make sure we can be sustainable. So I hope that answers your question. We can get those numbers for you, but the budget does have the overall personnel budget number. But we can get individual numbers, and we can have that at another meeting. I'll work with Robert. We can get those numbers for the council so that you can see specific things. So I hope that, again, Councilmember Stumble, I hope that answered your second question. And maybe Robert can add to that.
Councilor Lissay.
Rick, I really like the way you answered that question. I think the reason I do is because you've mentioned before, and I don't want to assume I heard it the same way, but that we have somewhere around 400 to 500,000 in trimming that can be done that would not impact our levels of service. And that's what I hear. And I want to stress that I don't support diving into salaries and rate schedules and tenure and all those things. I don't believe that is the role or responsibility of council to do that level of dive. I think that is beyond our scope, and we should be cautious of that. That is the scope of the city administration, and the administration can inform us of what that sort of general impact would be. And I think we should look at that both in the current biennium to get us to the end of the year and in the future next biennium to get us to that as well, and have that be a part of our everyday discussion, that when we look at levels of service, as long as it doesn't lower our level of service and we have some belt tightening that can be done, I trust that the staff will accommodate that in the numbers that we are receiving from Robert.
Thank you, Councilmember Lissay. I appreciate that.
Councilor Holloway and then Councilor Mayhew.
I'm sorry, Chair, can you repeat that? There was a beep in the middle of what you said.
Councilor Holloway and then Councilor Mayhew.
Okay. So I guess I'm Rick, I'm not really thrilled with some of your points in the answer, but my issue is I'm hearing a lot of math questions and I'm getting a lot of essay answers. and it's starting to drive my engineering brain crazy. Okay, so we do need to get to numbers here eventually, but in the issue of personnel, I guess I'm not taking it off the table. My priority though is to work those other portions of the Venn diagram to see what is doable in those, what is palatable in those. And we may come out at the end of that to say, hey, we're X dollars short. We're going to have to go look at that third bubble and figure out how to get that X dollars out of there and see what the impact is. But it is the third bubble after we do economic development and look at revenues. But just to take it off the table, if bubbles 1 and 2 get us there, I'm happy.
So the point on the numbers, and as Councilor Mayhew indicated earlier, the council did see projections on every one of these factors in previous slides and previous roundtables. So I would encourage you to go back and pull up those slide decks that you all have and find the slides with sort of those numbers on these individual pieces, and then even find some of those scenarios that mixed a few together to try and close that gap, or to show some, a combination of ways you can close that gap.
Okay.
Councilor Mayhew and then Councilor Ross.
Yeah, so a couple things. First off, staff, the staff is going to be deferential to us, folks. If we ask for more data, the answer they're going to give us every time is, okay, I'll go get that for you. This is our fault that we're asking for more and more data. So for example, someone earlier asked, hey, I'd like to see a table on how much revenue we're going to get in the future from property tax. Folks, it's very simple. We've gone over this in multiple meetings. It's the exact same dollar amount we have now, unless we do a 1% increase, in which case it is exactly 1% higher than what we have now. We already have this data. To ask for it again and again we're just sort of avoiding getting to the hard decisions we have to make. So that's one thing. We've got to be really careful about asking for data that we already have or that actually isn't going to drive our decisions. We're avoiding tackling our decisions. The second thing I'll say is I do think that police are city staff. I think that our fire, if someone could turn off that video game, I'd really appreciate it. But anyway, the city police are staff. The fire department, those are staff. I don't understand this distinction of staff. The notion of going in and looking at who's been here the longest or who gets paid the most, I guess this is some kind of a notion that we don't like supervisors and we want to get rid of supervisors, or I really don't understand the notion behind that. But I would encourage us to think of this on levels of service. Who you cut isn't the point. What services do we provide? So if there's a service you think we don't need to provide, let's talk about that. We don't need firemen anymore. We don't need policemen anymore. We don't need to sweep the streets anymore. We don't need to clear the snow when it snows. What thing is it that we're doing that we're either doing that we shouldn't do at all, or that we're doing too much of? Unless we're willing to talk about that, talking about which employee gets paid more or less that's not going to make a meaningful amount of money. We're going to have to cut whole services or portions of services. I am not aware of a single area where I think we need to cut services. In fact, I'm worried about the areas where I think we should add. And then I had one more point and I've forgotten it, so I'll stop.
All right, let's do a quick time check. We have about 8 minutes left, which means more like 3 minutes, because I think we want a 5-minute break before the council meeting. So let's try and wrap up with Councilor Ross.
Okay. So the meeting that we had 2 weeks ago, all those slides that did, there's a nice chart for the 1%. I would just go back and look at all those. That'll give some indicators, like what the 1% is, mill site is, etc. But we keep talking about the S21 and business park expansion that keeps showing up. How likely is that? If we're going to put that into our revenue over the next 6 years, how likely is that going to happen between now and then?
Well, I think S21 is very likely, I would hope, within 6 years. I mean, it's a plug and play parcel ready to go. all we need is a developer to show up to say, I'm ready to build. So but that's only about $200,000 a year in revenue. So it's not it doesn't move the needle much. The business park expansion, we have a particular developer who's been invested in the community already that's very interested in that and would be ready to move on that expeditiously if the council were to support that, or basically say, yeah, we want to definitely take a serious look at expanding the business park. Councilor Mayhew, did you have one more quick comment?
Yeah, I just remembered my last item, which is I thought I really appreciated Councilmember Holloway's listing earlier, where he went and listed items he was interested in. It seems to me if we could all do that, I was hoping we had time, of course we're out of time, but if we could each do this, if you could take however many of these items you're interested in. Now we have to be careful, I'm not trying to create a serial meeting here, but if we could send this information to the city administrator and the finance director, and just each of us take the ones that we have interest in and put them sort of in an order that you'd like to see. So if you think about a slide that's going to build up from base, and then it's going to see, now add this one, now add that one, now add that one, put in the order that you would like to see them added. And if they get that from several or even all of us, they can kind of meld that to something that looks like what most of us want to see in terms of ordering. They can bring us back at our next meeting the buildup of these scenarios the way that we would like to see them. And maybe that's the way that each of us can then say, okay, I like that set in that order. Maybe that would get us there.
So are you saying each of us prioritize what we want to see?
Exactly. Prioritize how we want them. Like if you were creating a slide, you'd want base plus the very next thing, service reductions plus the very next thing, S21, whatever your order is that you would like to see it build up in, and they'll give us, then they'll look at the combined input from each. So not copy each other, just send it to staff and let them then build it up the way we're asking and show us what we seem to have an appetite for or be interested in.
Yeah, treat it like a menu. Just say, hey, I went back and looked at the prior roundtable slides to see which each of these items approximately would bring in revenue in the short term and the long term. And I've sort of done a rough adding up. And I think these three things would be the combination I would want to see that I could support as a strategy. And then we could put together that scenario and have it ready for the next roundtable.
So is our
like a bit of a dry cough.
Is our homework then that we're actually kind of multi-voting our priority to Robert? And he'll tell us the results of the next meeting and what that multi-vote priority comes up with as far as closing the gap?
No, not so much of a multi-vote, just he's the waiter. Give him your order on the menu. And then we'll put together that dish and show you what it looks like on the next. We'll show you a scenario slide that shows whatever combination you chose and what that looks like and how much of a gap remains, if any.
Okay, but that's 7 different orders. That's the only issue I have. But go on, we'll go do that.
And I'm going to jump in without a hand raise. So I would want to know, is my menu only these 4 items in the taxes category and 3 items in the economic development category? Are there others? And really now down to 1 item in level of service. There's got to be more than that available to us, and it would be good. I know that we've got multiple sessions, and we'll go back through the multiple sessions and come up with those. But having a bullet list would be a lot easier, just to say, here's all the things we're thinking about.
All right, Councilmember Jeanson will absolutely have to end with you.
So everyone who has suggested that we ought to do a priority list, should I be putting my long-term hat on when I'm doing this priority list rather than playing around with short-term stuff, which you say you can do yourself?
Yes, thank you, Bob. I'm not sure if that was a statement or a question.
Question.
I think
long term
is the long-term one. That's where we really have the heavy lifting to do, is on that long-term solution.
Yeah, I would suggest if we do this from a long-term perspective, kind of come up with that, then we can focus in on the short term and say how much of our short-term problem did that solve, and then just deal with the remainder that's a short-term thing, because we've got some short-term tools that we can use that really won't solve a long-term problem, but would solve any remaining short-term problem. Things like maybe use some of our reserves or something like that.
Yeah.
All right, so with that, council, we're going to bring the roundtable to a close at 6:58. So we're going to delay the start of the regular city council meeting by a few minutes. Let's start at 7:05 sharp. So if everybody could just, again, leave, we're using this current format that we're logged in on. Just go ahead and leave it. You can suspend or mute your audio and pause your video if you'd like right now, and then we'll see everybody back here at 7:05. Jody, are you ready?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you. All right, I do see a quorum of the Snoqualmie City Council. So with that, I will call the Snoqualmie City Council meeting to order. Ask that the city clerk please take the roll call.
Councilmember James,
Here.
Councilmember Ross,
Here.
Councilmember Holloway,
Here.
Councilmember Mayhew,
Here.
Councilmember Lassay,
Here.
Councilmember Sundwall,
Here.
Councilmember Sheppard,
Here.
Mayor Larson.
I am here. Council, I have a motion and a second to approve the agenda for this evening.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion, a second to approve the agenda as presented. Is there any discussion? All right, hearing none. All those in, oops, Councilmember Ross, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry, I wasn't looking at the hands. Councilmember Ross and then Councilmember Sheppard.
Under Committee of the Whole, can we add the AWC conference and appointing a delegate?
Could you make a motion, please?
I'd like to make a motion to add on a Committee of the Whole, AWC conference and appointing a delegate.
Second.
All right, have a motion and a second as stated by Councilmember Ross. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Those opposed? All right, hearing none, the motion is approved. So Councilmember Ross, if you could help remind me when we get there to bring that forward. All right, Councilmember Sheppard.
Yes, I'd like to take the minute or the the warrants off of the consent agenda and the 2 agenda bills.
All right, so those will be moved off. Let me take a quick look at. So the staff or someone could tell me real quick, public hearing, that one would be moved to what committee? Oh, that goes to the Parks and Public Works Committee, I assume, and the both are Parks and Public Works issues, correct? Hearing none, I'll say I'm correct then. Okay. So if Sean, if you could help me remember to get those when we get there. All right, thank you. And of course, warrants under F&A. Any other items, Council, at this time for discussion? Okay, with those changes, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Nay.
Nay.
I'll get to opposed in a moment. So I'm not, I think I heard at least 4 ayes. All those opposed, I heard Councilor Sundwall will say as nays.
Nay.
Okay.
Nay.
All right, sounds like the motion passes. Unless anyone wants to call for a
Mayor,
roll.
can we get a roll call vote, please?
All right, we can do that. Jody, could you do a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember James,
Aye.
Councilmember Ross,
Aye.
Councilmember Holloway,
Aye.
Councilmember Mayhew,
Aye.
Councilmember Lassay,
No.
Councilmember Sundwall,
No.
Councilmember Sheppard,
Aye.
5-2.
All right, thank you, Jody. The motion is approved. So with that, the agenda is approved, and we're moving on to public hearings, presentations, proclamations, and appointments. And tonight gives me pleasure to ask for the council's confirmation for Daryl Lambert to the Planning Commission, position 4, for a term ending December 31st, 2021. May I have a confirmation, Councilor, a motion in a second?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, a motion and a second to confirm Daryl Lambert to the Planning Commission. As stated, is there any member of the public that would like to comment on this prior to possible action? Rochelle Clayton Strunk, thank you for joining us this evening. I see you there. If you do have there should be down in the bottom of your panelist box a little button that says raise hand. If you click on that, we can unmute you so you can make a comment if you'd like. Okay, so ask the staff or Kevin or someone if you could unmute Mrs. Strunk, and we'll give her a couple minutes for a response or for public comment. And if someone could please prepare a clock.
She's now unmuted.
All right. Rochelle Strunk, did you want to make a comment?
Hold on. Okay, sorry about that. Is this for general public comment or or
Not-
comment just to the public hearings?
No, this is a comment specifically to the appointment of Daryl to the Planning Commission.
I don't have a comment. I apologize.
That's okay. We'll get back to you for open public comments for items not on the agenda in just a moment.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, with that, if there any further discussion on that, Council, I just want to inform you what occurred here was Colleen Johnson, who has been a long-standing servant in the community on the Planning Commission and Council for some 16 years in the past, lives downtown, was I think a great representative voice on the Planning Commission, extended her sincere regrets that she was no longer in a position to be able to serve in the Planning Commission or the Civil Service Commission. So recently tendered her resignation. So Daryl will be filling that position on the council. Daryl is a downtown resident, so we'll kind of keep that same sort of geographic representation on the Planning Commission in that regard. So any further questions or discussion on this appointment? All right. Oh, I'm sorry. I do have a question from Councilmember Lasay. Go ahead.
Thanks, Mary. You answered one part of my question. The other part is can you maybe inform us a little bit about the qualifications that Mr. Lambert will bring along to his appointment?
Yeah, thank you. I'm not sure if we dropped the ball. I should have made sure that his application was a copy of that was provided to all the council members. Did you not receive that?
No, did not receive one.
Okay. If you have concerns, as much as it would be great to get him on the Planning Commission right away, we could delay this for a couple of weeks to make sure that you have that to review. I mean, I could pull it up, but I'm not sure it's the best use of the council's time at this point to go reading through the application. Unless you'd prefer to do that, we could try to pull it up real quick. What would be your preference, Councilor Listening?
Well, it's difficult to vote yay or nay on someone I have no idea who they are.
Okay, so Jody, let's pull that from the agenda if there's no objection, and we'll bring back that in a couple of weeks with the information that the council needs in order to make that decision. My apologies that I did not make sure that was. All right. So with that, I'll move on to the next is we finally, we've been in a couple of council meetings now trying to introduce you to Amanda Bossard, our new human resources analyst, who goes by Mandy. She started her employment with the city on May 18th. Unfortunately, at the last council meeting, she got in a little bit of a fender bender, and so that was once more delayed. So we're pleased to have her with us tonight. She earned her bachelor's degree from Eastern Washington University in social sciences, is a certified senior human resources.
Can't hear you.
Can I ask folks to please mute your microphone? There's quite a few people with their microphones on. And anyway, she earned her degree from Eastern Washington University in social sciences as a certified senior human resources professional. She has spent the last 10 years working in human resources in both the public and private sectors, with 4 years in HR management. Her specialties include recruiting, employee coaching, and conflict resolution. So with that, I don't know if all of you can see. If you don't see it, maybe scroll down to the next. There's Mandy there. So Mandy, go ahead and introduce yourself if you want to, or unmute yourself. Say hi to everybody.
Hi, can you guys hear me? Yes, okay. Well, I don't know that any more introduction is necessary, but I'm really happy to be at the city and look forward to meeting you all in person soon.
All right, you have a mobile office.
I do. Yeah, right now I was working at City Hall today, and I left my power cord for my laptop there, and so my laptop is dead. So I'm trying out the phone version, which actually it works really well.
All right. Well, Mandy, thank you for joining us this evening. Finally get a chance to meet you virtually anyway. We look forward to meeting you in person as soon as possible, and look forward to working with you. So
likewise, thank you.
All right. Have a good evening.
You too.
Okay, with that, we're going to move on to citizens' comments. First, a few ground rules. One, Snoqualmie citizens have the right to have their elected representatives perform their duties on behalf of the city in an efficient and orderly manner. Therefore, comments from those who do attend a council meeting will be limited to 3 minutes each. Second, please wait to be recognized and state your name and address for the record. 3, direct your comments to the council as a whole and not to individual members. In order to protect the privacy rights of employees and to protect members of the public from legal liability, please note that this is not the appropriate venue to make complaints or accusations about an implied or named city employee or agent. Such oral comments will not be allowed, but can be submitted in writing to the city clerk. Fourth, please note that this is not a time to ask questions of the council, mayor, or staff, or to engage in debate. The council is not being disrespectful, but they are here to simply quietly and respectfully listen to your concerns. And then last, please respect the quorum of these proceedings, as all due respect will be afforded to you. So with that, at this time, Rochelle, thank you for your patience. We go ahead and invite you, have 3 minutes to go ahead and make a comment for any item that is not on the agenda tonight. If it's to an item that's on the agenda, please wait until that item's introduced and you'll have an opportunity at that time. But if you
Okay.
have, go ahead.
Thank you. It's not on the agenda. I'm Rochelle Clayton Strunk. I live at 34007 Southeast Carmichael Street in Snoqualmie. I am here tonight representing the Snoqualmie Valley Local Advocacy Team, which is comprised of human service providers in Snoqualmie Valley, including Encompass, Snoqualmie Valley Community Network, Trail Youth, Snoqualmie Valley Transportation, Snoqualmie Valley Food Bank, CarePoint, Snow Valley Senior Center, and Mount Si Senior Center, among others. First of all, I want to thank you all for your work that you do to support our community, and public service is both demanding and rewarding, and we're here to help. Human services are designed to strengthen our community by providing the solid foundation of essential supports that allow people to live up to their full potential. Our deep experience and commitment to the well-being of every one of our community members makes us uniquely prepared to help our community navigate through this challenging time and the long-term rebuilding process that will follow. We are asking that you make a meaningful and sustained commitment to bolstering Snoqualmie's health and human service infrastructure. And we can do this through adequate funding and by ensuring that human service leaders have a seat at the table as important decisions are made about our community's health. Ultimately, it is the responsibility of the city to take care of its citizens. We are the contracted and embedded community partners who are already doing this work. We are the dedicated, nimble, and strategic partners you need to take care of all of the citizens, and we look forward to this collaboration. Again, thank you all for all that you do and for all that you will do.
Rochelle, thank you very much for your comments. And I know I speak for the council when I say thank you. We're so deeply grateful for the work of the human service agencies that often are doing work on the city's behalf in the community, tending to particularly the most vulnerable, and for the work you're doing, helping coordinate that work amongst the various agencies. So thank you for taking the time this evening to come and
Thank you.
Advocate for those resources. Thank you. Okay, I don't see any other members of the public prepared to speak. So with that, we will move on to the consent agenda. All items listed below will be enacted by one motion. Action items include the minutes for the June 8th, 2020 Roundtable and regular city council meetings. Do I have a motion, council, to approve the minutes?
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes for the June 8th, 2020 Roundtable and regular city council meetings. Is there any discussion, council? All right. Is there any member of the public that would like to comment on these actions? I don't see any members of the public remaining. So with that, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? All right, motion is carried. With that, we'll move on to ordinances. Finance Administration Committee, Agenda Bill 20069, ordinance regarding city council meetings, amending Snoqualmie Municipal Code Section 2.24.010 and providing for severability and effective date. This will be effectively immediately upon adoption tonight. So if I could have a motion, a second to approve ordinance 1236, please. Councilor Mayhew.
Yes, Mayor, have we read in the summary statement previously, or do we need that tonight?
No, because it's coming in under emergency action. So this is being introduced and approved all in one. All
right. State law RCW 35A 12.110 states that a city council shall meet regularly at a time, a place as may be designated by the city council. City code currently provides that regular city council meetings will be held on the second and fourth Mondays of each month at City Hall. Council rules of procedure allow for special online meetings, and since March 23rd, 2020, regular city council meetings have been held remotely online in response to the mayor's proclamation of emergency, resolution number 1535, ratifying a proclamation of emergency, and Governor Inslee's various orders. The proposed ordinance would amend SMC 2.24.010 to provide that council meetings shall occur at the time and place designated by the council's adopted rules of procedure or otherwise determined by majority vote of the council. Move to adopt ordinance 1236 regarding city council meetings, amending Snoqualmie Municipal Code section 2.24.010 and providing for severability and effective date. May I have a second?
Second.
Okay, motion and a second to approve ordinance 1236 stated by Councilor Mayhew. Seeing no members of the public present, is there any discussion, council? All right, Councilor Mayhew, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I was looking at the button. I apologize. I should have had this question ready in committee, but I didn't, so I'll ask now. I'm hoping the city attorney could comment, or whomever is appropriate. In the ordinance, in the section that the revised section of the Snoqualmie Municipal Code, in the added wording, we're adding the words regularly, at least once a month, at a place and time, etc. I'm just curious about the term at least once a month, why that needs to be included, and could we just omit that and simply leave it to the rules of procedure to define how often?
Sure, I'm happy to address that. Good evening, members of the council, and for anybody else in the audience, Bob Sturbank, City Attorney. The reason for including that language is that regularly at least once a month comes right out of the statute in RCW 35A12. You could omit it so long as we comply with whatever schedule we adopt, or that you adopt, or that you ultimately follow. So I put it in just because I was tracking the language of the statute, but you can certainly take it out and just be aware that that is a statutory requirement.
Okay, so we're not adding, this wording isn't in here to add some specificity. It's merely reiterating that which state law already requires, and it's just making it clear in our code where we're talking about the same thing.
Correct.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions or discussion, council? All right, seeing or hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
No.
All right, motion is carried. All right, with that, we will move on to the reports. Parks and Public Works Committee report. I'm sorry, we have two agenda bills here. Going back up to the consent agenda. Agenda Bill 20067 set a public hearing for July 13, 2020 at 7 p.m. or soon thereafter to receive testimony regarding the 6-year transportation improvement plan for 2021 to 2026.
All right. City transportation projects must be in the 6-year transportation improvement plan to be eligible for state and federal grants. Move to set a public hearing for July 13th, 2020 at 7 p.m. or soon thereafter to receive testimony regarding the 6-year transportation improvement plan for 2021 through 2026.
Second.
Okay, a motion and a second to approve Agenda Bill 20067 as stated by Councilor Holloway. Seeing no member of the public, I'll open it for questions. This is the chair of the committee before we.
I thought this was straightforward. I don't have anything else to add. We've got to put this forth to have. It's not a commitment to do anything. It's just a commitment to be available for grants that come.
Okay, Councilor Holloway.
Ms. Sheppard had her hand up first.
Councilor Sheppard.
The one thing that caused me to pull this off the consent agenda is because I noticed that it says that it's been published twice, once on June 8th and once on June 15th. And I was not able to see that it was already published in the Seattle Times. And we had another public hearing that was held by the Planning Commission, and we had a similar concern about something being published.
Councilor May, point of order.
It's not germane to the topic whether something did or didn't happen on another time.
I'll sustain that. Yeah, there's no evidence to suggest that if the council approves this public hearing that it won't be properly noticed, so I'll sustain the objection. Councilor Sheppard, did you have anything else?
Well, that's the concern I have, is that in one of the documents attached to this agenda bill, It says that it's been published twice and it hasn't.
Okay. I'm a little confused. Jody, can you speak to that? I mean, we wouldn't publish the notice until the council approved to do the public hearing, correct?
That is correct. In speaking with Public Works staff, I believe that they are not scheduling the notices for the Seattle Times until this week and next week.
Okay, so in the exhibit, it does show that it's been published twice already.
All right, Councilor Holloway.
So I guess I'm confused why we wouldn't go out. Yes, as the council said that it wants to be transparent and receive public input. So I'm confused why we would delay on a Ms. Trivia this action moving out, and I call the question.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to call the question at this time. So if there's a supermajority vote of 5, then any further discussion will cease. All those in favor of calling the question, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, say nay.
No.
No.
Okay, I have three no's, so it did not receive a majority, so discussion will continue. Councilor Holloway, did you want to say anything else?
No, I thought this was pretty straightforward. Let's go hear from the public. But if we want to talk about talking to the public as opposed to actually taking action to talk to the public, proceed on.
All right, Councilor Mayhew and Councilor Lissay.
Yeah, I'm just not yet understanding the point that's being raised. It appears, I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with where in this paperwork these dates are listed. It sounds like they're incorrect and shouldn't have been listed. And I just want to make sure, is this just in a staff report, or is this in something that we should amend before passing this to remove some dates so that we're not listing dates that didn't happen? I'm just confused.
It's in the one exhibit, the notice of public hearing with STIP 2021 to 2026 priority. If you open that file, you'll see that it says it's been published.
Jody, can you speak to that, please? Maybe clarify that or clear up what's going on.
I did not prepare that, so I really don't feel comfortable speaking to it.
Okay, thank you. Can Brian or someone who prepared that and knows what Councilmember Sheppard's speaking about, can you clear this up, please, for us? Indicate if it was just an error that needs to be, as Councilor Mayhew said, corrected prior to vote.
I think it's clerical.
Yeah.
If I can perhaps just speak briefly to that. Originally, the staff had planned to have a public hearing on today's date, and they had prepared a notice. Taking a look at that, they were reminded that we needed to have an agenda bill to set a public hearing, which is what they did tonight, holding off having the actual public hearing until July. So I believe that they did prepare a public notice with the correct dates, which would be this week and next week. However, that did not appear in this particular agenda packet. So I believe that.
Question, let's simplify the question. Can someone please just quickly try to locate or find what Councilmember Sheppard is talking about?
Guys, this is easy.
The last sentence, publish June 8, 2020 and
Okay.
June 15, 2020.
All right, I think Councilmember Sunwell's probably found it or hasn't.
Yes.
Move to
strike.
Go ahead, Councilmember Sunwell.
Move to strike the post and publish dates from the notice of a public hearing.
Second.
Okay. Moved and seconded to strike as stated by Councilmember Sunwell. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, motion is passed, so that issue's been stricken. I see Councilmember Mayhew's, Sheppard's, and Sunwell's hands are still up.
Did you?
Okay, Councilmember Mayhew, did you still have a comment or question?
Yes, given that that's resolved, I move to call the question.
Second.
Okay, motion and a second to call the question. All those in favor of calling the question, say aye.
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 All right, those opposed?
No.
All right, the motion passes. There's no further debate on the agenda for setting the hearing with the language stricken as stated by Councilor Snow. All those in favor of Agenda Bill 20067 with the noted amendment, please say aye.
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 Are those opposed? All right, motion passes. Thank you, Council. We'll move on to Agenda Bill 20068, Agreement for Consultant Services Amendment Number 6 with Petite Incorporated for Infrastructure Improvement Project Phase 2.
This amendment is for Petite to complete the design of Phase 2 of the Infrastructure Improvement Project. Their duties will include the completion of the design of the project through bid acceptance. Move to approve the Agreement for Consultant Services Amendment Number 6 with Petite Inc. for Infrastructure Improvement Project Phase 2 and authorize the mayor to sign.
Second.
All right. I have a motion and a second to approve Agenda Bill 20068 as stated by Councilmember Sunwall. I'll go to the chair first of the committee to comment before we open it up.
Yeah, this has been discussed ad nauseum at committee meetings, so I move to call the question.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to call the question. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed?
Nay.
No.
Aye.
Can we do a roll call on the nays, please? Councilmember Holloway, I heard you. Who else?
Yep.
Who else said nay?
Councilor Ross. I did.
Okay, so I have 2 votes no. Was there a third? All right, then the question's been called. There's a majority. So now we're back to the original motion to vote on that. All those in favor of Agenda Bill 20068, say aye.
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 All those. All right, motion passes. Thank you. Any other reports for Parks and Public Works Committee?
Ken, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you ask for nays.
Oh, I'm sorry. All those opposed? I thought
I didn't hear it, so.
All right, all those opposed on Agenda Bill 20068?
No.
Okay, so that's 1 no. Thank you, Councilmember Sheppard.
Mhm.
All right, any other report for Parks and Public Works Committee?
No other report this time.
Okay, Community Development Committee, any report?
I do have a report. I wanted to update everyone on the historic downtown relook. So if you recall, back in 2018, the City Council passed Planning Commission to perform a relook at historic downtown regulations currently in our Snoqualmie Municipal Code. And the Planning Commission did a very thorough job in reviewing the codes and provided the recommendations to community development. We held a joint meeting with Planning Commission to review their findings earlier this year, and we made it through a portion of the 15 elements of the recommendations, but we did not finish going through all of it. But with the COVID crisis and limited resources, the Community Development Committee decided to review the document for items that can be implemented in the near term that can help our local businesses. So our committee identified a couple of themes, such as storytelling tools, tourism, streetscapes, building uniformity, things like that. And we asked the Planning Commission to review and recommend code changes for these items. Long term, we want to continue reviewing the other Planning Commission elements that they identified and ensure that our master plan, our vision, and our comprehensive plans reflect our overall vision. So that's an update.
All right, thank you, Councilmember Ross. Moving on to Finance Administration Committee, Councilmember Mayhew, could you please make a motion on the warrants?
Move to approve the claims and warrants as presented.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve claims and warrants as presented. Again, I've not been going to the public because I don't see any additional members of the public in attendance now. Councilmember Mayhew, did you want to speak to this before we open further discussion and questions from the council?
Yes, I just want to share with the council that the F&A committee performed a detailed review of claims and warrants as specified in council's procedures for the duration of the pandemic emergency. There were no unanswered items in that review. Secondly, that no council member no council member has provided any warrant or claim questions to the F&A committee that have not at this time been answered. Therefore, I move to call the question.
Second.
Okay, motion and a second to call the question. All those in favor of calling the question, please say aye.
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 Those opposed? Say
No.
Nay.
I think I heard 2 nays, Councilor Sheppard and Councilor Holloway. Were there any additional nays? All right, with that, it's a 5-2 vote, so it's passed. So now we're back to approving or voting on the warrants without further discussion. All those in favor of approving the warrants tonight, say aye, please.
Aye.
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 All those opposed?
Nope.
All right, motion passes. Thank you. Now moving on to Agenda Bill 20070, Resolution 1542, amending the rules of procedure of the City Council of the City of Snoqualmie, Washington.
State law, RCW 35A 12.120 states that for a non-charter code city such as Snoqualmie, quote, the city council shall determine its own rules and order of business and may establish rules for the conduct of council meetings and the maintenance of order, end quote. The Snoqualmie City Council established its rules of procedure by Resolution 630 in 2002, and since then has amended the council rules of procedure on a number of different occasions, including mostly.
Sorry, point of order.
Go ahead, Councilor Wilson.
This is not the summary statement that I see in the agenda packet in front of me.
Thank goodness, it's way too long. Thank you.
I'm not sure what the conflict is you're looking at. I'll have to defer to the staff or Jody or
It's
someone.
the wrong one.
I was reading the wrong thing, Mayor.
Oh, okay.
I like what you were reading better.
So Councilor
It
Mayhew.
was really long.
Yeah.
May I proceed, Mayor?
Yes, you're going to mock yourself a little bit and then proceed with the correct one, or?
No, I've been sufficiently mocked, I think. So, but I'll defer that to other council members.
We can take a vote.
All right, Agenda Bill 20-070. State law RCW 35A 12.110 states that a city council shall meet regularly at a time and place as may be designated by the city council. City code currently provides that regular city council meetings will be held on the second and fourth Mondays of each month at City Hall. Council rules of procedure allow for special online meetings. And since March 23rd, 2020, regular city council meetings have been held remotely online in response to the mayor's proclamation of emergency, resolution number 1535, ratifying a proclamation of emergency, and Governor Inslee's various orders. The proposed resolution 1546 would amend council rules of procedure 8.1 and 11.3 to provide that regular council meetings may be held at City Hall or remotely online in accordance with notice and other procedures specified in Rule 11.3 for remote meetings. Other council rule of procedure amendments will also assist in streamlining regular council meetings, particularly with respect to provisions around public comment and the consent agenda. Move to adopt resolution number 1542, amending the rules of procedure of the City Council of the City of Snoqualmie, Washington. May I have a second?
Second.
A motion and a second to approve Agenda Bill 20070 as stated by Councilor Mayhew. Again, there's no members of the public, so I will just open it for discussion and questions at this time. Councilor Mayhew, go ahead.
Yes, there's a item caught by Councilmember Lassay. I move to amend the motion in section 9.4.4 as amended to read, to insert the words following the words the mayor, to insert the words or chairperson of the meeting.
Second.
Okay, motion and a second to amend as stated by Councilor Mayhew. Is there any discussion on this item? Councilor Mayhew.
Just quickly say this is just to conform it with the same language in every other part of this code, just to acknowledge that there could be occasions where the mayor is not the chairperson.
All right, Councilor Mayhew. I'm sorry, Councilor Lassay.
I'll just spend this time mocking him, but basically that's exactly what I was going to say.
You're good. All right, if there's no further discussion, all those in favor of the amendment, say aye.
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 All those opposed?
No,
Motion passes. So back to the original motion with the amendment included now. Is there any further discussion? All right, hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Hold on.
Hang on. Okay, Councilor Sunwell, go ahead.
So I gotta be honest, I don't really understand what we're doing here.
Councilor Mayhew, do you want to go through kind of a high level, kind of just highlight the changes that were done here?
Yeah, so there's a few things that are going on. They're all coming together because they all have to do with our rules of procedure. The first couple items have to do with our previous rules or code around having our own meetings had the requirements in our code and specifically called for them to be physical meetings. Those have now been taken out of the code by our previous action, and we're putting them in now to our rules of procedure. So that's just moving our requirements for our meetings and then allowing that they can be online. So that's the first two changes in 8.1 and 11.3. Then what we're doing is some changes to streamline our meetings. So what it will do is consolidate public comment on any items that are on the consent agenda and any matters that are not on the agenda at all into the upfront section so that any citizen can comment on those before we move into agenda items. It then provides that anything pulled off of the consent agenda will then be immediately taken up following the consent agenda. As you saw tonight, there was a number of items that came off the consent agenda, and then those kind of get scattered across the rest of the agenda. It's difficult to track that for all of us. And the fact that it was on the consent agenda in the first place is that at least 3 of us thought that it was a non-controversial item that we did not need to spend time on. The problem with a consent agenda is that multiple items are enacted all at once. So a council member might be for some and against some, and therefore we don't want to require some, or we don't want to prohibit someone from pulling an item off the consent agenda that would allow them to vote separately for those they're for and against. On the other hand, we want to have a streamlined mechanism where if indeed there's not a, the council does, a supermajority of the council does not want to spend time on an item, that we're able to just move on, have the vote, and then move on to the rest of the agenda. So by moving those items pulled off the consent agenda to immediately following the consent agenda, we're able to handle those. If indeed a majority of the supermajority of the council does not want to spend time debating those, we'll go ahead and have the vote, but we've honored the ability of every council member to vote the way they choose on each item. So these changes are designed to accomplish those things.
And then
So
I think
it doesn't make any changes to a single person pulling something off of on the consent agenda.
May I answer, Mayor?
yes, go ahead, Councilor Mayhew.
Yeah, so it doesn't. And again, the problem is, or the challenge we have is, I mean, even if we look at the US Senate, they allow any senator to pull an item off. So the challenge with any form of consent agenda or unanimous consent is when you're voting for multiple items, you don't want to ever put a council member in the position of having to vote for an item they're against just because they're for other items that are in that single move. So we're continuing to honor and allow council members to pull an item off. The purpose of a consent agenda is for items that council members do not feel is controversial that we don't want to spend time on. It allows us to still, it's slightly less streamlined, but allows us to quickly move to call the question if we wish to do that, determine if there is indeed council members who want to spend time on that. And if in fact there aren't, a supermajority is ready to just vote, then we're able to quickly just vote on that matter immediately following the consent agenda. And so we've honored both our desire to streamline our meetings for items that are not, that the council does not, they're not controversial, council doesn't want to spend time on them, but we've also honored the ability of council members to vote the way they wish on each item.
That makes sense. Thank you.
All right. And I think, I don't know if you mentioned it, Councilor Mayhew, but I think the other change too was just, again, trying to update the rules and procedures to comply with practice of late. One, for example, being public comment immediately after an agenda bill is introduced rather than, and before council debate rather than after. And go ahead, Councilor Mayhew.
Yeah, sorry, that's a good point. I apologize for skipping over that. In our process by which we go through and deal with each item, each agenda bill, there wasn't we had not specifically enumerated when it was that public comment would be taken. And so we had a situation where, let's say, we knew, as we had an item tonight, which I was heavily mocked for my mishandling of, but we did have an item tonight where the intent was to immediately amend the motion. So it was unclear, should public comment come before that? And as you heard, the mayor actually, following our practice, looked to see if there was any public comment. The thought is, that's not really logical. We ought to take public comment once we have an amended item that's actually what we're going to debate. So what we've done is now specify when in the ordering we would have public comment. And so what will happen now is we'll have the agenda bill moved, then the chairperson, the person moving the agenda bill, will have an opportunity to make any subsidiary motions they want to make at that point. And that would include amendments, because that's a subsidiary motion. Then once we're past those initial subsidiary motions, then we'd go out for public comment. Then we'd go to our debate. So we just clarified, previously that was our practice. Actually, this changed our practice slightly, but that was just custom. This actually puts it into our rules so that we know that that's the ordering that will follow.
Okay. Councilor Ross.
There was one additional item in there, and that was the Mayor Pro Tem assigning council members to liaison positions. And then the liaison, as you act as liaison for the council, you actually vote for the council. And so there's just rules and clarifying that you're not voting on your own, you vote based on what the council would vote for.
Yeah, Mayor, may I comment on that?
Yes, please.
Yeah, Councilman Ross is exactly correct. There's two things. One is we have followed the practice. Our custom is to appoint council liaisons in the same manner that we appoint council members to council committees and chair positions, which is the Mayor Pro Tem appoints them and then they are confirmed by the council. Our longstanding practice now is simultaneously with doing that, we also, the Mayor Pro Tem appoints council members to those liaison roles, and then those are confirmed by the council at the same time as confirming the council assignments. And so this, but actually that was not in our rules of procedure. We were silent on how that should occur. So this merely puts that into the rules of procedure to follow what we already do. And then the second thing is that it clarifies, because we had nothing that spoke to this, it clarifies that a council member in a liaison role represents the majority of the council, not their personal view when they're in their liaison role. And so this clarifies, puts into our rules of procedure that expectation and puts in a requirement that if a council member in a liaison role is asked to express the view of the council and does not know the view of the council, then they must abstain from expressing an opinion until they have obtained the majority view of the council.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Mayhew. Any further questions or discussion, Council? All right, with that, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, all those opposed?
No.
All right, motion passes. 6-1. Is there any other report for Finance Administration Committee, Councilor Mayhew?
No further report.
All right, Public Safety Committee, Agenda Bill 20065, Fireworks Stand Permit for American Promotional Events Incorporated Northwest.
At our last council meeting, we read the summary statement and we had some discussion with this. So I would just move to approve the American Professional Events Inc. Northwest Fireworks stand permit. Can I have a second?
Second.
All right, motion and second to approve Agenda Bill 20065 as stated by Councilmember Jeans. Is, again, there's no members of the public available, but Councilmember Jeans, go ahead and start with you as the chair of the committee.
So this is the same organization that is, we've worked with for years. They know how to do what we require them to do. This is in the city limits.
I can't hear him.
Yeah, Councilmember Jeans, is, you're a little muffled. Is there a way you can speak more directly into your microphone, or?
I'll speak up better if I can.
That's much, much better.
This is a repeat of people we've done business with them for several years. They know how to do business with us. They know how to comply with our requirements, which means legal fireworks. This is the year that we're not going to have the red, white, and boom on the 4th of July, so there'll probably be more interest in people buying individual fireworks. We'd rather have them buy them from someone in the city limits complying with our requirements rather than to go out of the city limits and get illegal fireworks. So, this is something that arguably should have been on the consent agenda, but we are recommending this to you.
All right, thank you, Councilmember Jeans. Any other discussion and questions, Council? Seeing or hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Nay.
Motion passes 6-1. Councilmember Jeans, is there any other report for Public Safety Committee?
With all the national and even local attention, at least local with respect to Seattle, of the police departments and cutting police departments, we had on our agenda for this last public safety meeting, we wanted to hear from the chief. The chief gave a very comprehensive expression of the things that we do which are in compliance with the things that are being recommended to city police departments around the country. It was well prepared and appreciated from the chief. And I think if you had, I think a lot of us had a chance to listen in on it and to appreciate that we seem to have ourselves in good shape.
Great, thank you, Councilmember Jeans. All right, with that, we'll move on to committee of whole, and to make sure I don't forget the item, I want to come back to the AWC delegate vote. Councilmember Ross, I don't know if I can maybe invite perhaps another council member. Might be a little awkward to nominate herself, but if someone could make a motion to designate Councilmember Ross as the voting delegate for this year's AWC conference, that might be helpful. A motion in a second, please.
Move to.
Catherine.
Second.
All right, motion and a second to appoint Councilmember Ross as the voting delegate for the AWC conference this year. Is there any further discussion, Council? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay. All right, motion passes. Thank you, Councilmember Ross, for your time and commitment to that. Did you want to say anything else on that item or about the conference?
There's still time to sign up, and they always have good informational sessions. So, and I understand Councilmember Jeans is also attending. So
yeah, no more convenient year to do it. Your lodging is as comfortable as home this year, so
Yeah.
encourage folks to do that. Yeah. All right. Well, I don't know if Councilmember Holloway's lodging is so comfortable this year. Their house is half torn up. All right. Again, staff reports are verbal. The second meeting of the month. However, any other questions from the staff at this time? Hearing none. Rick, I'll throw it out to you, and you could maybe tap any other staff that you so see fit to maybe give a quick COVID update. I think the council's primary interest is going to maybe be on the update of the COVID relief fund monies, and would love to maybe hear from one of the council liaisons, Councilor Lassay or Sunwall or Mayhew, on their involvement with that as well. So Rick, I'll go ahead and kick it over to you.
Thank you, Mayor, council members. So what I'll do is Chief Carrera on? So I'll have him kind of talk about, I think, yeah, he's on. I'll have him talk about kind of what we're doing, or kind of give a quick update on COVID, quick update on return to work. And then after he's done with that, we can talk about a little bit about the CARES Act, but I'll have one of the council liaisons maybe talk about that, and that should cover everything that the mayor has brought up at this time. So with that, Chief, can you hear me?
I can. Can you guys hear me?
Thank you.
Yeah, so I don't have a whole lot to report. We are in phase 2 now, which is great news, both for our local businesses as it doubles the capacity, especially in the restaurant arena, and allows us a little more flexibility. Although there still is quite a few restrictions, it's still important that we wear our masks. It's still important that we continue to try to follow the rules that have been established through the phase-in process as we continue to reopen the community and the public. So you may have seen in the news that we have opened up the playgrounds, which is good news. Public Works and Parks did that as soon as they can, and they're following the lead of other area parks districts and other cities up here in the Upper Valley, which is good news. We are doing our return to work planning right now, beginning to basically solidify a plan to start getting staff that are not in the high risk category to potentially be able to start working in City Hall on a more regular basis. They have been working there periodically, but we're talking about maybe making it a little bit more formalized schedule. We're still working through that planning piece as throughout the rest of this week. Most of our focus has been on human services, and then also the CARES relief grant process. We've spent a lot of time over the last couple of weeks and then handed it off to the council liaisons to finalize that list. And that's really all that I have, except for we actually had a successful parade this past week following the COVID-19 guidelines that we had established as a city, and it was a safe event, which we were glad to see. I've heard a ton of accolades from both the students and the public for such a wonderful event to send the graduating class off in a kind of an unprecedented time. And definitely Nicole Wiebe and some other staff in the city were critical in making that event very successful. So kudos to them, and I can take any questions that you may have.
Yeah, I just quickly want to thank Councilor Frost for coming out. I saw her out to support the parade, and I'd give kudos to Councilor Holloway for supporting the parade too, but he was there he was in the parade with his son, Alex, who was graduating this year too. So it was a lot of fun had by all. Councilor Sunwell, you've had your hand up.
Well, I was going to jump to the, I had a comment about the grants, so I don't know if that's the time and place right now.
I think it's a perfect segue. Go ahead, please.
I don't have a recap other than I thought, you know, it's the first 30 minutes maybe didn't seem like it was going to go super well, but you know, in about 2 hours time, 3 of us figured out how to distribute $408,000, something like that, $1,000. And like I agreed with Councilmember Lassay. Councilmember Lassay agreed with me sometime. It was just a love fest. All kidding aside, I thought it was a really great job of 3 different people getting together and figuring out how to spread somebody else's money as equitably and as possibly across the valley. And I got off that meeting just feeling so proud of our city and how we have chosen, unlike most cities, we have chosen to distribute that to our small businesses and not replenish our own coffers. And I hope the PR team of one is able to cleverly put us out there. Because I think that's remarkable. So thank you to my cohorts for making that such a smooth process.
All right. Oh, Councilor Lassay and then Councilor Mayhew.
Yes, unfortunately, I don't think the meeting was recorded, and you don't have any record of Councilmember Sunwell and I agreeing with each other, but I will attest that it did happen. What I found remarkable about the whole situation was that we kind of struggled through how to work, and ultimately we came, really to the unanimous conclusion that we needed to support our businesses, and it was just there was no doubt in that, and it was just a matter of coming to where are we going to support them and how much can we spread that around? And I think what I really enjoyed about it is that we were able to contribute to every business that put in an application that met the criteria. That we were able to spread the money. Not everyone can get everything that they asked for, but it was a case of it was 100% commitment by the staff and by the council members present to contribute the dollars to our businesses and not, as Councilor Sunwell said, not put it into our coffers. And I think that is, as we will find through probably the coming weeks and months, that is going to be incredibly unique right now to have a jurisdiction of any size to proceed that way. And I think that's attributes to how much we feel that our community cares about our community.
Thank you, Councilor. Let's say Councilor Mayhew, then Ross, and then Jeans.
Yeah, I will say it's extraordinarily disconcerting and almost disabling to watch Councilmember Lassay and Councilmember Sunwell agree. I didn't know how to proceed for a while, but anyway, we got past that. And I do think that the staff that put together, that handled all of the applications, I believe we had some significant assistance from the Chamber of Commerce, Snow Valley Chamber of Commerce. The job that was done in prioritizing those requests and putting together a recommended list was absolutely fantastic work. We just have a great staff that worked on this, both inside the city and those that we brought in to help. I think there were some tweaks that the three council members recommended. I don't view them as tremendously significant. We did question some things and then received answers that in the end we thought were good answers. And so there were some tweaks, but by and large, this was an endorsement of what the staff had done, and they used great criteria. And I agree with Councilmember Lassay and Councilmember Sunwell. This is to be able to funnel this money to our community, help our community get back on its feet, help them get through this. This is a very challenging time. All the help they can get is going to be so instrumental in helping them through it and helping them get back on their feet. I think we have a lot to be proud of here as a city for doing this.
Great, thank you, Councilor Mayhew. Councilor Ross and then Councilor Jeans.
So how many businesses are receiving the CARES Act, and when will they actually receive funding?
I don't know if Nicole's on here, Rick or Mark or Nicole or whoever might have those numbers right offhand.
Yeah, let me see if Councilmember Ross, let me see if anybody can give you the exact figure of actually how many businesses, but we got almost 80 applications.
Right.
I think, and I'm trying to remember what the list of Dylan wrote the list out, and when we looked at it all, I don't want to guess and be wrong. So, Nicole, you on?
We could go to Councilor Jeans and then come back to that. I think Chief Kerr, is right now. I mean, we could do some general parameters that I think we all recall, but if you want some more exact numbers, we could get that to you.
Yeah, I'll get that. I'll get that out to the council members. Yeah.
Councilor Ross, would that suffice if we just follow it up tomorrow in the next couple of days to get that to the council? I mean, some basic metric summaries.
Right, that'd be great. I mean, 80 applicants, that's amazing. If we're able to give out the majority, that's fantastic.
Yeah, we'll kind of break it out just in general metrics. How many in total, how many human service agencies, how many businesses, kind of spectrum. All right.
Mike says I'm looking at the spreadsheet, there were about 81 businesses that received some money.
Good.
Yeah. And we do have some
additional. Appreciate that.
Yeah, and I think our decision, unanimous decision, was to use the similar template rather than reinventing another process to also use. We got really good news that the grant coming from King County will not be at $11,000. It'll be closer to $21,000. We did get, it wasn't the best news, but it wasn't the worst. We got at least $10,000 total of grants, or two businesses did, from the Working Washington grant. So, and the $5,000 grant from Kathy Lambert. So there's a few more several, so we'll probably have that committee get together one more time just to do another final tweak on where some of those monies would go. Councilor Jeans.
So it sounds like you people have done a wonderful job. I'm sort of piggybacking on what Catherine, I think, has asked for. And I unless there's some public information.
If you could lean up to your microphone or did we? Yeah, there you go. Perfect.
Well, so I'm interested in a record of just trying to understand what we've done. So if you can get that to us, that'd be fine.
Yeah, Rick, we could get some sort of summary done, couldn't we? Yeah.
Thanks.
Yes, we can. Absolutely.
To Councilmember Ross's question, I had the same question. I don't recall when we're going to start cutting checks and have people been notified that they've been awarded.
Thank you, Councilmember Sunwall. Just real quick, before we go ahead and notify, we have to make sure we get the contract language all complete. Once that's done and we're ready to roll that out, they will be notified that it's coming, and then we're going to try to get the money out as soon as possible. Our target date to roll money out, which I'm very proud of, is hopefully by the end of June, 1st of July, we'll actually have money out to the businesses, which is, in my opinion, a great time frame considering. So that's the goal for now. And so we're going to be working on getting that done ASAP.
All right, Councilman Ross, did you still have a question or did you just forget to put your hand down? All right. All right, thank you. Another last item is the special meeting on the 29th. This is a 5th Monday month, and so I think we're at least going to have the benefit of having a couple hours to really roll up our sleeves and dig into more of those details on those scenarios, and again, kind of choosing from the menu. So if some of you put the work into kind of putting whatever combinations you want to see in advance, that will make that meeting much more productive. Mayor Pro Tem Mayhew, did you want to make some comments on that item in terms of just revisiting the council work plan or just sort of updating where we are at, whether we're on schedule, behind schedule, or what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so that's exactly what I wanted to comment on. So everyone, we are actually behind schedule. And so it is, as we talked about at our roundtable tonight, I think we all recognize and in fact are ready and I think eager to make our decisions. It's time for us to make decisions. So I think we have all the information. We did at the roundtable. I did ask you to try and get your requests as soon as possible to finance director and city administrator so they can build some scenarios. And I'm guessing that there won't be 7 unique scenarios, that there'll be fewer than that, because I suspect some of us are thinking the same way, but we'll see. But I would also encourage us, if there are any other significant pieces of information, not things that will make a difference around the edge, because we'll deal with that when we get into the biennial budget, but significant things that would help set our overall course and that you would like to have, please get that information request in as early as you can so that finance director and his team can pull that information for us. So I think that we're all on the same page that this coming meeting, that's all we're going to be doing is really trying to make decisions about the operating budget. Don't forget, once we get past the operating budget, we've got capital budget and we've got utilities. And by the way, the capital budget is the non-utilities capital budget and the utilities capital budget. So we've got a lot more still to come this summer. So really, and then we'll have to get into the biennial budget itself. So that's, I think, our challenge is to really try and get to decisions at our next meeting. And the pressure's on us now. And we're a bit behind schedule. And so please come and be prepared on Monday to try and get to decisions.
All right, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I think that's all we have under committee as a whole. Unless anybody wants to remind me of any other items or announcements for tonight. Oh, Councilor Jeans.
So Maurice asked an interesting question during the course of the day, and I didn't see anybody take a shot at it. I wonder when we are planning on getting back together, and I realize you can't give a specific question, but if someone can comment on that, it would be nice.
I'm sorry, I'm not sure if you were a little muffled there again, so I'm not sure if I completely understood the question or if someone else maybe understood it.
When are we to get back together?
Councilmember Jeans, this is Rick. Before Chief gets on, are you talking when we're all going to get together in physically back in the council chambers and have our meetings live together? That's what you're asking?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Gotcha.
I'll revert that to Chief Carrera. We're working on that right now, or to Bob Sturbank, but I'll defer to the chief to start that answer that question.
Sure. So I did respond to Councilmember Lasay's email. So you'll see that in your inbox. Basically, the requirements outlined in phase 2 does not allow for greater groups than 5 people one time per week. So we have to wait until phase 3, which will have a limitation of up to 50 people without a number of times per week. So for planning purposes, phase 3 will likely be the time that we could actually begin to meet in person again. There'll likely be restrictions similar to what we did before we went to these types of meetings here. And we'll also likely have to have a conversation about how to handle public comment because there is still some restrictions for high-risk people in the community. So phase 3 is the short answer.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Any other announcements before we, I'm sorry, Councilor Lasay, did you have something to say?
Yeah, Chief, just wanted to follow up. I put a follow up. I've seen it being interpreted that no more than 5 people in a gathering unless social distancing can be maintained. Is that an accurate interpretation? Because I've heard from other jurisdictions that's the way they're interpreting phase 2.
Yeah, no, that's not my understanding. Reading that one bullet within the Safe Start program, if there was a limitation of 5 people and that was removed because of social distancing and wearing masks and things like that, there would be likely no restriction at that point of actually having meetings. So that restriction is specifically to limiting the number of people that can get together regardless of social distancing, if that makes sense.
I guess I wouldn't. I'm not questioning you by any means. Don't get the wrong interpretation here. But it would seem odd that it's no more than 5 people when restaurants can be open to a 25 or 50% capacity, of which would be far more than just 5 people in one location. I'm just curious of how that comes together, because I think that might, interpreting it as just 5 people in one location. I'm certain if the city council chambers were a restaurant, you'd probably have 30 people in there.
Yeah, no, I understand it is confusing. We're just trying to respond to that, and I'll tell you what, we will look into that a little bit further just to make sure we are accurate, and then we'll respond more thoughtfully. How does that sound?
Sounds great. I knew you'd handle it. You've done a great job.
Or we could just serve food at every council meeting.
That is enough.
Councilor Sheppard and Councilor Mayhew.
So I'd like to get a copy of whatever the code is that you're reading from that defines what that limit is.
Councilor Mayhew.
Yeah, I was just gonna suggest the same thing, which is that we serve food. So yeah, something to think about.
If we sold food, we could have been having meetings all along.
Oh, we could, maybe that's how we could solve our budget problems.
Well, I was thinking we just rotate where each council member gets to pick their 5 favorite people to meet with at the city hall. You just take turns. So.
I don't know if you could count to 5 on that. That might only be 3 or 4.
Ouch. Okay.
It's hard to find a quorum.
I was going to say that might reveal interesting things, and touche, point right there. Okay. If there's no other business at this time, then I'll ask that we go into an executive session regarding potential litigation pursuant to RCW 42.30.140, Section 1, L-I, and ask Bob Sturbank, Rick Rudimetkin, and Perry Phipps to remain. The executive session is anticipated to last approximately 15 minutes to half an hour, and there may be, but it's unlikely that action will be following. At this time, the council will go out of this Zoom meeting and will rejoin at a later time. So please keep the link for this meeting. We're going to have to shut down and go out of it in order to open another one. I think Rick was going to send a fresh one in case you lost track of your executive session link. So look for that for those of you. The
Yeah,
council.
I can't, Mayor, I can't send a fresh one because it's my personal link. However,
Okay.
every one of you who are on an executive session should got one from IT or Snoqualmie Web, and it should see webinar 2 on it. You should be able to get out of this one, log into that one, and then log out of that one and log back into this one. So keep the link for both of these. Kevin, if you're on, am I correct?
That's correct, and I'm sending a fresh one right now.
Perfect.
All right,
So thank you, Mayor, council members. So like I said, get out of this one, look at your email and log into the other one that Kevin is sending.
All right.
And Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
just a clarification on the that citation should have been RCW 4230-110, and then the subset 1 small I small Roman numeral 2. I'm not quite sure how that wound up that way, but just since so that the call of the recess into executive session is correct and the minutes will reflect it. Just wanted to point that out.
Great. Thank you, Bob. All right. We'll see everyone in executive session here. Enjoy your evening.
Bob, are you supposed to be in the executive session?
I am trying to find the link.
You should have just received an email with it.
Let me see. There it is. Thank you.
You bet.
do have a quorum. I think just about everyone's here. I don't have any other further business unless anyone else has any other comments, so just other than a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to adjourn tonight's meeting. Assuming there's no debate, all those in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, motion is carried. Thanks for taking the time to dial back in to adjourn the meeting. So everybody enjoy your evening. Thank you. Have a good night.